First item I have is a request for bill introductions. Seeing none, we'll move on. You all have had copies of the minutes provided to you, so would like to approve the minutes from January 13th through February 25th. And I recognize Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move the approval of those minutes.
We have a motion. We have a second. Second by Senator Kirshen. Any questions or discussion, changes? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have a review on the profile. I think each one of you had one handed to you. And JG, if you would please review that for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to start off all the time with the same thing. This is not a prediction of what we think is going to happen. This is a planning document that if things continue just as they are, this is what we're projecting. So not an actual projection, just a planning document. One thing I want to mention is that what we have included in here is everything as far as revenue or expenditures and taxes that have passed the Senate already. So it has the governor's recommendation in Senate Bill 267 and 268. It has Senate Bill 22 in it as it passed the Senate floor. It does not include the governor's two tax bills that she had in her governor's budget recommendation. And it does not include, it shows up in the shorthand list, the $158 million in reamortization. So it doesn't have the $85.8 million in it, and it doesn't have the savings of $158.7 million in it. So that's our starting point with this. The 2020 actual ending balance was $495 million. We have all of the revenue included at the top. Starting balance, $495, $7.7 billion for revenue. The governor's recommendation for transfers, that is increase of $152 million. $132 million of that is not making the PMIB transfer. So that brings us to total revenue of about $8.4 billion. Expenditures approved was $7,649. It shows all of the adjustments for caseloads and reappropriations. It has the governor's recommendation. At the very bottom, you'll see that there is an addition of $28.8 million. That is committee action as of yesterday. So the ending balance would be $737 million in 2021, which is about a 9.7% ending balance. If we go to 22, we start off with that 737. Once again, the consensus revenue estimates, the adjustments that is included in the transfers, which includes the movement of the budget stabilization fund, about $82 million from the budget stabilization fund at the bottom to revenue. So it shows as a transfer into the state general fund. It has about $67 million in highway fund transfers from the highway fund into the state general fund. And when we first did this, the local ad valorem had not been pushed back a year, so it originally in the consensus numbers had the local ad valorem tax reduction fund transfer included, $54 million. The governor in this bill pushes that off. So the total is at $224 million. It includes the $506 million for the Senate tax bill. Total revenue is a little over $7.9 billion. Once again, the starting amount was $7.6 billion in expenditures, At the very bottom, you'll see the Senate adjustments of $145 million. Want you to remember that the governor's recommendation showed up as in the shorthand that we did, part of the savings and expenditures. So the 145 million includes the $158 million increase for reamortization. So since that did not occur, it increased the total expenditures by that 158. So you would see a savings of around 13 million below the governor if not for the reamortization adjustment, which then would show an ending balance of a negative $176.5 million. Big adjustments are the $85.8 million not in revenue that the governor had included, the $506 million additional reduction in taxes in Senate Bill 22, and the reamortization. So this is where the committee is as of action taken yesterday. So I'd stand for any questions.
Thank you, JG. Questions? Seeing that, good job. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, then we're going to continue our action on Senate Bill 267 and Senate Bill 268. Got a few amendments. We'll start out with Senator McGinn on higher education.
First, I have a question. Is Shirley in the other room? Does anybody know?
Amy?
Mr. Chairman, Shirley is still in House Appropriations.
Okay. Does she expect to be there?
She will be up here as soon as at all possible. The higher ed was the topic in appropriations today.
So, Mr. Chair, I have one that has, actually two that has to do with higher ed. If we could pause, I have a different one, and then if we could maybe work through others until Shirley gets here, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, I do have one though. I'll start.
Sure, if you wanted
Pretty
that.
simple one.
Okay,
All
start
right.
with that one.
Thank you. I have an amendment that deals with testing, saliva testing for COVID-19, and what the situation is that Wichita State University's lab has been testing in the community. And there's been some conversations between KDHE and WSU about that they were working outside of their contract. The reasons they were doing testing in the community is because they wanted to make it simple for people who work, play, whatever, go to school, and they didn't have to get off their job and then go drive to the health department or go drive to a specific designated area. So Wichita State made it easy for people to do the tests and be able to get the tests, whether they were at schools, located at schools, whether they were located at a work or whatever. So they went into the community, and I believe and they believe that they probably stopped a lot of clusters and spikes. So what this amendment does, and I'll hand it out, and I have an amendment to my amendment. I just wanted to make it more specific if you just give those two guys one. So what this does, KDHE currently has money under the CARES Act to make these payments, but they are challenged by the fact that that WSU went outside of the contract. And what I propose here is some language that encourages them to continue having their conversation. I do have a change because I wanted to narrow it down to only those certified testing labs. So if you will look at the first paragraph, go down to the first word that you see, entities. Entities is removed, and what is inserted is certified testing labs for testing. And after community, it's specifically to COVID-19. So 2 things to tighten this down. 1, you already had to be a certified testing lab. 2, you're just testing COVID-19. So all this does is it's a proviso language to encourage the Department of Health and Environment to continue their conversations with WSU on the testing that they've already been doing in the community.
Seconded by Senator Clays. Are there any questions or discussion on this amendment? Senator Saltram.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In discussion concerning this topic and others, the conversation that I've had was, of course, with KDHE, indicating that the billings and such were outside of the scope of the agreement. I empathize with Wichita State and don't necessarily oppose this. I'm just wondering to what extent we need to tighten the language down specifically so that more than just encouragement occurs. I think they're a leading institution in the state. What they've done is provided a mechanism so that, as the previous senator indicated, persons could be tested without interruption, and it's vitally important. And I think this testing is going to need to carry on for some time. So I'm wondering if the language in this particular amendment needs to be even stronger and not just encouragement for the department to go back and cover some expenses. Can we list?
I'll refer to Jill if I may, but I have been in long conversations with KDHE about this. And I would rather give them a carrot because they have mentioned that WSU has done very good things in the community. They don't disagree. It's just that it was on the outside of the scope of the contract. And I would rather them work it out because then I don't want to see something next year, another deal, and say, oh, they were outside the scope of the contract. I think WSU was very creative and did do good work. And I felt that the KDHE was sincere in trying to figure out how to make it work. So, Jill, would you like to further explain the amendment to greater detail?
Jill?
So by the language that you see before you, I think we are saying shall, because it says expenditures shall be made by the above agency. And I guess maybe the senator and I had a miscommunication, because if we were strongly encouraging, we would put may, expenditures may be made by the above agency to do this. And by saying expenditures shall be made from such monies to reimburse certified testing labs that have entered agreement with the above agency, and they're providing community COVID-19 testing to the general public.
I just like to use the word encouragement. So, but I agree that it has shall. So that is the intent of the amendment.
Certainly.
Thank you, Jill. Senator Saltram.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman and Senator, I don't disagree with the overall idea and approach, and we'll let it go from here. We'll wait and see what happens, but I too want to highly encourage them to engage and use our resources on the state level as opposed to those out of state that are actually more costly and do delay the results. So if all are agreement with this language, then I'll go along with that too. So thank you.
It does say shall, and we have another bite at the apple, and we'll see what kind of progress they make by the time we get to omnibus.
Right, we can, that's what I was just going to say, is that at omnibus, if there's been no movement, we can be a little more direct. Is everyone okay with the language? Senator, if you'd like to, move your
He
motion.
made a motion and he seconded.
Second, would you like to move it? Okay,
Well, he already seconded it.
right. You move your amendment, okay.
I think we're ready for the,
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, and we'll come back to the regents and higher ed when Shirley shows up. So one item that I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page, Senate Bill 155, we briefly talked about that yesterday, and it's included at omnibus for 2022. I also want to make sure that we're all on the board for 2021 also. So I just want to make that. Okay, that's a motion. Seconded by Senator Clays. Any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next we will have Senator Kirshen has some language for Wichita State.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What we have here is an amendment that we're offering because what happened in the course of the allotments the governor made last year that for WSU, the money that was moved out was replaced by some federal money or GEARS money to make that change. And this amendment allows them, it went into account where they can't use it. So this allows them to transfer that money to any other item of appropriation for fiscal year 22 from the State General Fund for WSU. And the idea is that it's a one-time deal, only 1 year for 22. That allows them to move that money where it can be used best and not stuck in an account they can't use. So,
Questions, Senator Clays?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll second it first if that's the motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Questions,
And
Senator Clays?
then I have a question. So does this affect other universities, or is Wichita State the only one that has this issue?
I don't know, this is strictly for Wichita State University.
Okay.
Is it?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions?
Zach, you want to, I asked for Zach to clarify that,
Zach, would you please come up?
WSU.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my knowledge, Wichita State is the only university that's impacted by this.
Can you tell us your name, Zach?
Oh, sorry.
For the,
Zach Gearhart, Wichita State University. First time I testified this session, so a little rusty.
thank you. Any questions of Zach? Seeing none, thank you, Zach. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have Senator Clays is going to give us an amendment or something to look at omnibus on schools. Galena, right?
Oh, yeah, no, this won't be omnibus. We'll just put it in there. I've got a motion, and then I'll explain it, or vice versa, whichever you prefer. I'll do the motion first. Add language allowing USD 499 Galena to calculate local option budget using the current year valuation for FY22 and FY23. This would add approximately $148,000 for local option budget state aid for 22 and $90,000 for 23. And I'll just wait a second and then I'll explain.
Seconded by Senator Fagg. And you would like to explain it?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I'll just explain kind of what's going on with that. So the Galena School District is going to lose approximately $8 million out of a $25 million total valuation due to a hospital coming off the tax roll beginning in the fall of 2021. The current law allows for a 3-year average of the assessed valuation per pupil to determine LOB state aid, which works well most of the time. That commentary is coming from the Kansas State Department of Education. I'm just going to read it directly. However, losing about 1/3 of their valuation without a corresponding increase in state aid will have a devastating effect on their LOB mill levy. Again, the commentary is from the Department of Education. One potential solution, which is what you see in front of you, would be to allow the school district to use the current year's assessed valuation for computing supplemental general state aid for the 21-22 and 22-23 school years. That essentially gives them a softer landing on this instead of taking the hit of 1/3 of their valuation being taken away immediately. So, soft landing. Stand for questions if anybody has any. So I asked Norma for that, and it wasn't available yet, but she did give me the motion language. So essentially, it would be that we would use the current year valuation for 22 and 23, and then the additions would be approximately $148,000 in state aid for 22 and $90,000 for 23. So you know that that's and then zero after that.
Senator
Instead of
Soltron.
taking that hit at once.
Do you have some idea, Senator, the amount they might have in their reserves?
No, I don't have any background on the Galena School District. It's just my understanding that this was something that was brought by Senator Hildebrand that was then brought by the Department of Education as a kind of an outlier issue.
Other questions? Senator Clays, so we're just trying to soften this, and but you're saying some SGF dollars for 20?
Right, so it'd be their local option budget state aid calculation. Yeah,
But are we asking for SGF dollars?
no, I don't believe so.
So this is just on their levies so they can adjust it?
So that the mill doesn't get drawn or brought up. Is that correct, Jill? Yeah, so it would increase the state aid, so it does affect SGF. It's 148 in fiscal year 22 and 90 and 23. $148,000, 90,000 in 23.
Senator, would you be amenable to us pushing this off to omnibus? So if we could look at maybe there's some relief funds that could maybe be used for this?
If you'd be willing to add it and have it reviewed at omnibus, I'd be fine with that.
Is the committee okay with that? Okay, let's. So we had a motion, we had a second. Any other discussion? As amended to look at it omnibus. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next we will have Senator Erickson with some adjustments to K-12.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sensing a common theme here. So in that spirit, I do have a motion, and then as Senator Clays has set the precedent, then I will explain a little bit. But I would move that we remove the high-density at-risk funding language for fiscal years '22 and '23, and remove state foundational and local option budget state aid for fiscal year '22 in the amount of $183.2 million, and fiscal year '23 in the amount of $280.3 million.
We have a motion and a second by Senator Clays. Would you like to explain?
Thank you, Mr. And this came up last minute. I apologize for not having it in writing. Literally was getting that verbiage after committee actually started, so I apologize for that. And also, I'm sorry, in my motion, I also want to review it omnibus. Apologize to review it omnibus. And the explanation for this is there's so, I'm sorry.
1 minute first. So we need to add to the motion that this will be looked at omnibus to make sure that we can use relief funds. And
Yes.
we'll have to make adjustments. And the second is Senator Clays is second with the amendment. Okay.
Okay, very good, thank you. With all of the moving pieces in funding, with the passage of the new relief fund recently from the federal government, K-12 education in Kansas stands to receive an additional approximately $1 billion, all said and done, through the packages. We want to be able to examine the best use of those funds, to be able to see how to best allocate those. And so we want to examine that in depth and have a little time to do that and make sure that we are using funds appropriately and maximizing our state general funds. So with that, I'll stand for questions, Mr. Chair.
Questions? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. Assuming that we can't use relief funds, we would then put this money back into the budget.
Yes, we are not proposing not spending those dollars. We're looking at exploring alternative sources of funding for those items.
Because I certainly wouldn't want to jeopardize the Gannon ruling and get back in court. So.
I know none of us wants to see that. We just want to explore different ways of funding those items.
I am relieved. Thank you.
Yes.
Senator McGinn.
So not just on this, all of them, but I would really prefer, and I know it's last minute, they have a copy machine right there in Senator Billinger's office. But I like, when we package a bill, I like to have all the amendments in my package so that I can refer back to them at a later time. So I would like for the committee to try to have, I would just like to have a copy.
I apologize. That's a rookie mistake here. I'll take the.
So maybe we can get those.
We'll get you some. We'll get you some copies. Yes. I should have told everybody beforehand that we needed copies, and I didn't. So, failure on my part. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, a couple of cleanup things. We did work on the PMIB yesterday, correct, Amy? Did we said we were going to pay that off, right? Did we do that yesterday, or we need to do that today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, our notes do not indicate that you made a motion on modifying the governor's recommendation on PMIB.
Okay. Senator Clays? To pay off PMIB.
I move that we make the final payment on the PMIB loan.
Second by Senator Solentrum. Any questions or discussion? Senator Hawk?
I don't suppose you might consider an amendment to reconsider that at omnibus, since we don't know what's going to happen with those federal funds that we're counting on. Would you be open to that as a friendly amendment?
You know, we could look at it at omnibus. I mean, we'll go ahead and do it, and we'll look at it at omnibus in case we can use relief funds, sure.
Right. Yeah.
Sure. You bet. That's what we've been doing all along.
Good. Thank you.
Good idea.
I make that amendment?
Would you like to amend that, Senator Clays?
Yeah, that's fine.
He amends it?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, and Senator Hawk seconded? Okay. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries, so we get that taken care of. Okay, one other item that we had was, sorry, Senator McGinn, I didn't know if you was coming back or not. We just agreed to pay the PMIB in full and look at it at Omnibus to see if we can use relief dollars to pay it. Okay. Next item wanted to touch on was the judicial branch. They've had a lot less court proceedings, and so their docket fees have fallen by $5 to $7 million, and would like to make a motion that we look at omnibus if there's a possibility of using relief funds to backfill that for them, because almost all of those dollars go to salaries. So if we don't find some help for them, they're probably going to be furloughs and missed days at work. So I'll make that motion, second by Senator Clays. Any questions? Senator Solentrum?
Do we know, did the governor lapse any funding for the judiciary?
Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would remind the committee that the governor, per statute, passes through the judicial budget directly to the legislature. So what you see in her budget is exactly what the judicial branch submitted for their request.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Amy. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will have a,
I'll do it anyway. Okay.
okay. Senator Clay's on proviso to continue the oversight with the LCC on relief funds like they are currently today.
I'll make a motion to have the Legislative Coordinating Council provide oversight for any federal funds from any federal relief act that has been or may be passed in the future.
I have a motion. We have a second. Senator Solentrum seconds. Discussion? Senator Hawk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would assume that there's at least that this motion wouldn't preclude the possibility of doing another Spark type thing relative to how we manage some of those federal funds should the governor decide to do that before it came to, it doesn't require that, but it wouldn't preclude that. Just wanted to make sure that was the case. I think that was a very successful process that the governor used and the work of the Spark Committee.
I don't think it would preclude that, but if we need to add language that it doesn't preclude, you know.
I think if staff just confirms that that doesn't preclude that, I'm okay with that
Amy,
language.
would you be able to do that, or Jill?
If we can't, then I certainly want that language in there, but.
Jill, if you would, please.
So it's my understanding what Senator Clay's motion is doing is basically saying, because like, let's just quickly review what happened last year. So last year when you all left, you put in this Senate, or this, the special session, House Bill 2016, Section 4, provided that State Finance Council would review coronavirus relief funds. And I'm putting that in a big package because it talked about, number one, that was already out, but then it anticipated any other federal funds for fiscal year 20 and 21 that the State Finance Council would review all that. At the June 16th State Finance Council meeting, they authorized the money to come in, and if it could go to a state agency through an existing federal fund, that money could be put in that federal fund and then expended. So I believe what Senator Clays is trying to accomplish here for fiscal year, and please, sir, if I'm not focusing or getting on you, is for FY22 for federal relief funds, whether it be in this bill or in a future bill, if there is a future bill, senators, that LCC would approve those expenditures. So I thought that was the motion. And so when Senator Hawk talks about could Spark review it, they could, but I didn't hear anything in his motion that would require any sort of review by Spark and input by Spark, specifically, if that was your question, sir.
Would you suggest maybe that we put something additional in there that says that the LCC could authorize, the use of a Spark-type committee? Be up to the LCC?
Certainly, sir, yes, it would be up to them.
Would Senator Saltrop?
I had another comment, which may.
Senator Hawk.
Mr. Chairman, I would let the good senator from Riley go first.
Thank you, and I'm sure you'll want to comment. It seems to me the process we used with the earlier CARES money was the State Finance Council, not the LCC. Is that not correct? Spark made their recommendations, both in steering committee, and then they had an executive committee, and then did that not go to State Finance Council, not LCC?
Amy? Yeah, she's shaking her head yes.
Yes.
So I'd be more inclined to use the same process that we've used, which I think was successful, as opposed to the LCC. And if I hear the motion, it's actually changing that to go to the LCC. Is that correct?
That's intentional.
I'll make an amendment at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, to change that to the State Finance Council. But I'm sure there'll be other people who want to weigh in on that. Thank you.
Senator Saltrop.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, the good senator from Riley may feel like the Spark Committee did a good job, and to a large extent, they did, but I certainly didn't agree with all their decisions, allocations, and so forth. So I think it should be weighted more heavily by the legislature in making decisions for that funding. So I would agree that the State Finance Council should have the oversight.
Wait, no, LCC.
Said the opposite.
Excuse me.
Yeah, you said LCC. Okay. Other questions? Senator Hawk?
Well, just to move my ball along, I'm going to make an amendment that it be the State Finance Council, not the LCC.
The maker of the motion does not agree to the amendment.
I assume you wouldn't accept it as a friendly amendment, and I may not get a second, but.
So it dies with no second.
I thought I saw Senator Petty second that. Guess not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any other questions on this or discussion? All in favor? Oh, wait, excuse me. Senator Clays.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make perfectly clear that this requires a vote of the LCC, a majority vote of the LCC. That is what I mean by oversight. Hold on. What's going on? Okay, so it would require a statutory majority? Is that the word we're using? Okay, great. A statutory majority of the LCC is what I'm looking for there, and that's what I meant by oversight in my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so as amended, we have this, a second again by Senator Sallentrump. Senator Hawk.
Just for the record, I'm going to assume from the comments the reviser made that it doesn't preclude some sort of Spark-type committee if that's approved by the LCC. Just, I don't think it
Shaking her head, yes.
I don't think it needs to show in there. And then clarification question. Is a statutory majority a supermajority on LCC?
It's 5.
Out of
7?
7?
Out of 7, yeah.
That seems like a supermajority to me. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? You want to be recorded, Senator Hawk? Okay. Senator Hawk is a nay. Okay, let's see, what else we got? Senator McGinn,
I can kill some time here for just a minute.
I'm going to give you a chance do you want to speak on the Senior Care Act? You want to?
Yeah, well, so, and I need staff to give me that number, but the Senior Care Act, our side did not put it in, and I think, and Senator Petty's not here, maybe Senator Kirshen can remember, but I think it was an oversight on our part, but it did not come up. It did not come up in our deliberations, but on that particular item is, Amy, I don't know if you're the one to ask, I believe the House put a position in.
Yeah, we just want to make sure it's on one side or the
Yeah,
other.
we want to make sure that, yeah, so that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe Matthew Moore is on WebEx and could answer that question for us.
Thank you. Matthew, can you tell us what the House's position was on that item?
Certainly. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
The House's position was to add $3 million for the Senior Care Act, all from the state general fund, and that was just to replace what was allotted, which was what was approved last year.
And I have a question, if I may.
Senator McGinn.
On that Senior Care Act, did that have the Meals on Wheels? Is that a different area?
I
Or
think
an age?
a portion of it deals with Meals on Wheels. I mean, the Senior Care Act is one of the aspects to provide senior services. There's
Right.
a small portion Meals on Wheels, but they do also receive other funding and have other programs
Right.
for congregate and home delivered meals.
So I just wanted to clarify, KDAD said that they currently, because of COVID-19 money or CARES money, that they had enough money to cover the Meals on Wheels. So they were not requesting because they said they had enough money, so.
Would you think we could look at this at omnibus and see if there was any relief funds that maybe could be directed to this, like we have on some of these others, or?
Well, we're going to have a new package come down, and we don't know what that looks like
Right,
yet.
that's
So,
why we were waiting till omnibus.
It's just that you'll probably negotiate, depending on what the House does, you'll negotiate your mega prior to, but you can always, throw in there, take a look at this again at omnibus.
Okay. Would we need a motion on that, Jill, or just, okay, we don't, okay, we're
Just
good.
add to look at.
We'll just add language, okay. So the other item that I had on the list was also with Senator McGinn on the budgets with KDADS and DCF.
The budgets?
On DCF and KDADS, keeping them separated.
Oh, yes. Well, did you? Well, I think what you're referring to, Mr. Chairman, has to do with when the governor suggests or ERO, it gives direction to staff to write it as though the two entities are together, which is KDADS and DCF. It makes it more difficult when you're trying to deliberate through the budget, and I know Representative Will Carpenter asked for it to be separated. And Amy did give me a good technical reason why it did not get separated, but I really don't know what kind of language to put in there other than some kind of encouragement in the future, because I'd hate to see us, EROs proposed again next year, and, you know, here we are, we still have got them kind of interconnected. It wasn't terribly difficult, but it would maybe be more clean and concise. So I guess in thinking about this, perhaps, and I think I think this year is over, but, I mean, it's not over, it's just beginning. But I think in the future, somehow, I know that staff has made those little small reports that kind of give us an overview of both, and so maybe staff could think about how to make those a little more simpler. Now, if the governor doesn't offer an ERO next year, then it's probably not going to be a problem. So, Amy, do you want to speak to that?
Amy, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staff is looking for some direction regarding the bill that will be drafted. If you want them, the governor's bill that you're considering right now has those together as the Department of Human Services. So we're looking for direction on proceeding with that bill as committee action if you would like those separated into the original agencies.
Okay, I got a question.
Senator McGinn.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't exactly understand that original request, and now I do. And I mean, if the staff wants direction, I think when they draft the bill, they should separate those items so that it's easier to read in the budget.
Second by Senator Clays. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we're down to the Senator Hawk.
I have one other one that's in Senator McGinn's committee area that Senator Petty wanted me to bring up. That was a conversation in the House. Under KDADS, there is a Children's Mental Health Initiative, which is $3.8 million. That's under the Children's Initiative Fund. It kind of passes through, but there's no apparent oversight of that. And Senator Petty was suggesting that we consider maybe having a report on that, potentially on or before omnibus, just to get a handle on how that money is spent. And maybe there's some other ways to look at how that might be implemented in terms of universal home visits, et cetera. And so I'm not sure if you had any discussion on subcommittee on that, but she thought that might be a significant amount of money that we'd certainly want to get a better handle on.
That's a motion from you, Senator?
Well, I'd like to let Senator McGinn reply
okay.
before I make a motion.
Okay, well, let's do discussion then before we make a motion. Senator McGinn.
Thank you for clarifying that a little better. She sent me a text as well, and I didn't quite understand what she was driving at. And but she would like to, I guess, have a report so we can look at better use for the funds, like the universal home visiting. So I would make a suggestion, because I'm really not clear exactly what she wants. She's on some different programs, children programs, that I am not. So, Mr. Chairman, not that I want to keep having meetings, but you know, we're going to have two subcommittees to try to dive into some things. I would suggest that we have that subcommittee meeting on this here in the next couple of weeks. And then I think we would have a better understanding as to if any action would be needed. And then we could bring that back for omnibus.
Would that be okay with you, sir?
Yeah, I think that sounds great. Do we need a motion on that, or just understanding we're going to do that?
Unless staff thinks something needs to be in there for omnibus, but But otherwise, we'll just go ahead and have the meeting, and we'll bring it up to this full committee after we're done.
I'm fine with that. Sounds very reasonable to me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good.
And I had one other thing to mention when appropriate, but I don't want to interfere. And
No, I think we're down to waiting on Shirley, so if you
Okay.
go ahead, Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a short visit with State Treasurer Lynn Rogers, and last week we did a quick passage of Senate Bill 88, which was providing the $100 million for PMIB funds to go to municipalities because of the exorbitant bills they were facing out of the cold snap and for electricity and natural gas. Part of the fiscal note on that bill, and I don't have it written, but Senator McGinn, it's on the fiscal note in writing on page 7 of Senate Bill 88. There are two pieces to that. In 21, the state treasurer needed to hire legal counsel to make sure that the state's liability was covered, et cetera, contracts written right. That was $33,000, and they've had to do that. They want to pay for that out of their, at least in the fiscal note, it says the treasurer's operating fund. The second was to implement it, hiring a half-time position in 2022. I would like to see us give them the authority to pay for legal counsel because we need to get this money out to these municipalities now and then put off omnibus looking at that half-time position. So if you think that's appropriate,
So you're saying they would pay the $33,000 out of their operation budget?
yes, out of their
And then
budget.
the omnibus will look at,
the half-time position
Right.
and how that might be paid for.
second by Senator McGinn. Questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so we're down to the higher ed language and restoration with Senator McGinn.
I will dangerously start this without Shirley holding my hand. So I think, because I think there could just be some conversation that people want to have.
You have it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, there's a couple of items that I'm going to bring up. And the second item, just so you can be thinking of it, is the restoring the 5% cut by the governor, and I'd like to have conversation with this committee about that before I go there. But this, what you are receiving here, has to do with, just go to the bottom, and this has to do with the deferred maintenance. And it's how money is appropriated to the universities. And you'll see, we've had in there for years that the monies is adjusted for gross square footage calculation. And they're taking this out, and is Regents, yeah, there you are. You might want to get closer because I may have some questions for you. I believe the effort here is to take the square footage out because, as we know with COVID, our world has changed and so has our university world. And we're going to see different things occur, such as virtually. I believe that we'll still have some in-person classes and that kind of thing. But what this does is it, in its current form, it discourages universities from tearing down buildings and things that are no longer of use because they would be punished by this calculation. So I would like for, I have Casey in my head, and that's not your first name. That's okay, yeah, Matt, thank you, Matt. So if you have some further comments on that, I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for bringing that forward. That, as we
Please state your name.
Yes, Matt Casey, Director of Government Relations for the Kansas Board of Regents. Thank you for bringing that forward. We've had a lot of conversations around the deferred maintenance issue that's been on our campuses for decades now. And as we're moving forward to address that, this proviso language, having this removed would remove that disincentive to remove some buildings if they need to be removed, taken offline, from being disincentivized in the formula for having a smaller square footage on their campus. So this would remove that formula to provide more incentive to shrink the square footage, focus the priorities on those buildings that they need to keep and maintain, and be able to allocate money towards those buildings. So that's the intent of removing that formula, so that there'd be more flexibility on the university campuses to utilize those funds.
Questions for Matt? Senator McGinn.
So how are you going to distribute those dollars to the different universities?
We would look at the needs across all the universities, the buildings. Not every university is going to tear down the same amount of buildings, so it wouldn't be equal across each university. But there may be a university that has 2 or 3 buildings that they need to tear down, or a university that has 1 building they need to tear down. So then we would look at the needs of the rest of those buildings that are still standing and where those dollars need to be allocated, and that would be done in conjunction with the universities and the needs that they have.
Okay.
Other questions? Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recall the Future of Higher Ed Task Force had a fairly long discussion, and I think we had a consultant for the regents that looked at deferred maintenance. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Over the last year.
Correct, Senator. Thank you for bringing that up. We have done 2 studies, a space utilization study and a deferred maintenance study that was done across all the university campuses, so that we had an apples to apples conditions report across all of our universities. We are now in the process of taking the space utilization study and the deferred maintenance study and merging them into one document, so that we have a much clearer picture of the needs across our campuses in terms of building maintenance and building usage. And as those reports are merged together and we are able to assess those with deferred maintenance dollars and the formula being removed, we're able to more accurately distribute those dollars across our system.
Follow up.
Go ahead.
Senator McGinn.
You can let him follow up.
Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't have that study clearly in mind, but essentially we use, is it EBF funds that are allocated based on that square footage now? And I recall as we looked at one of those studies, I'm not sure which one, that the different universities were laid out in terms of what their deferred maintenance needs were. So my question is, if we change this wording, does that impact certain universities in the Regent systems more negatively than others relative to how square footage is?
I would say it would not, because it would allow flexibility for all universities as they are assessing their campuses.
Because I'd want to make sure we weren't potentially creating an unintended negative consequence if some universities happen to have more square footage, but yet still had needs relative to their enrollment and programs, et cetera.
Correct.
So I'm hearing you say that the board is going to work very hard to make sure that, I think there have been some struggles over the years making sure that distribution of those EBF funds was fair, and I would certainly hope that that stays fair and gets us to what is was it a $1.1 billion or $1.2 billion total deferred maintenance problem in our regions?
That's correct, and that'll be the top priority of making sure that this is equally distributed across the universities based on the need and how we need to adapt our campuses going forward and address these facilities.
And so as I look at the amendment in front of me, that's taking that operating fund money, that 10.2 million, and putting it into capital renewal or deferred maintenance, but that's 10 million out of 1.1 billion. How are we covering the other billion?
That's still being discussed as to how we're going to move forward to address the rest of the need. This is just a first step to look at how we can take some of this funding that's in this budget, direct it towards that need, and also provide the flexibility to, as you see in the language, to take some buildings down, because the EBF language needed that included in there too, so that we could address that issue as we're moving forward to getting our universities efficient and our space utilized in a very effective way.
And how much is that EBF every year? About 70 million?
The EBF for our institutions is 1 mil. There's a 1.5 mil total. For the EBF on a university campuses, that's 1 mil, and it's about 42 million, but I could get you that specific number, and Shirley might have it as well.
Is there carryover money in that?
I would need to look to double check on that, but I think that is utilized pretty fully, because it doesn't, it's not nearly enough what we need, so it's utilized every year.
So it doesn't even quite get us, well over a 10-year period, it wouldn't even get us up to half. But
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions?
I do.
Senator McGinn.
I remember the report last fall and the engineer architect showing all their needs, and they did that assessment. And I asked the question, did you make those assessments based on what just happened with COVID? And they said, no, we did not. So I'm glad to see that you are putting that with the needs assessment now.
Yes.
Of what you need.
Yes.
So is this 10 million for raising and also repair?
The change in this amendment would allow the flexibility to also raise buildings and specify that the EBF could also be utilized for that.
Well, this is where I wished I had Shirley, because I remember when we did the crumbling classrooms in 1998-ish, around that time. And there was a suggestion after I came to the legislature that anybody that wants to put their name on a building needs to add 20% deferred maintenance on there. And that, if it was a private building, and I believe that was ignored. And I believe in 2015, if I recall, I think we put some teeth in. I don't know if we put it in statute, maybe you know, but the universities in the past have deferred putting money into deferred maintenance. And so my question is, and perhaps I should just ask for a report, here she is. We're on deferred maintenance, Shirley, and just gave the background of the crumbling classrooms, and now on to the 2015 legislation. And well, I don't know if it was legislation or put in the budget that they would put money in for any new buildings for deferred maintenance. Can you expound on that just a little bit better for me, please? Here, how about a microphone?
I'm sorry, I missed that. You said in 2015 what?
2015, I believe, you had a sheet for me, and I don't have it right now, that the legislature said that you shall put in money for deferred maintenance. And I will go find that paper if you can't.
Are you talking about the bonding that started in 2012?
I thought it had to do with any new facilities that are built, that if they are public, that they have to put money in for deferred maintenance.
2007 was when they did the deferred maintenance, infrastructure maintenance fund. And then I'm not thinking of the 2015.
Well, my recollection is that they weren't doing anything, and so the legislature did something in 2015. So we'll find that piece of paper, and I'll present it to them later. I guess I want to get back to my point is, are you guys putting, when you build a building, are you making sure money is getting put in for deferred maintenance? Because I feel like we still have crumbling classrooms going. Now we have a new deferred maintenance program, and now we have another one. And to me, eventually with this, I thought it was legislation, but these priorities would be that we would be phasing out having to take care of these buildings because they would be taken care of because we already factored it into the budget and didn't wait 20 to 30 years and said, hey, guess what? We got a problem.
Yes, good question. I can't answer definitively on every building that's being built if there is, but I do know it's a high priority and that I do know that a lot of them, there is a deferred maintenance or a maintenance plan to address that's built into that cost. So I can get you more information on that, but I do know that, that there are new buildings that have been built that have had that built in. And so I know that that's a priority going forward with the new buildings to not, that issue needs to be addressed up front when that building is built. So that there isn't just, like you said, 20 years down the road, you say, well, we've got all this deferred maintenance, and then that adds to the backlog, and then we have the issues that we have now. So that is definitely a high priority on any new buildings that are coming online right now.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, did you have it? No? Okay. I will move this forward, and that a report will be provided with information on this at omnibus.
We have a motion and a second by Senator Clays. Any other discussion or questions? Senator Hawk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you mentioned there's another item. The only concern I have about this, and I think it's a good idea for both the legislature and the Board of Regents to get a handle and have a plan for deferred maintenance, because I know it's been an ongoing problem. But I'm concerned that that money initially in the governor's budget went into the operational fund. So if we take that out, and I think our universities, because of COVID, are in some difficult financial times, and lots of things have gone on the past year, and I want them to be successful. So I'm only worried about this money that might have been used for filling in those operational holes going into deferred maintenance. So I'm hoping item 2 that you mentioned, restoring the cut, will at least keep our universities having funds. So I'm eagerly waiting to hope that passes also. Don't know if Senator McGinn wants to respond to that.
Any other questions? Okay.
I'm just supporting this because the part of the money is used to start tearing the buildings down that we're not even using anymore.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Senator McGinn, you want to do the 5%?
Yeah, Shirley, there she is behind me. Seemed like you might have had a lively conversation in the House, so I'd be curious about how that went. But I have been asked to make this proposal, so I'll leave it up to the committee to restore the 5% cut by the governor to higher ed. But I have a question for Shirley because I'd like to know what the dollar signs are on that. Amy gave me this.
Yes.
So. So the governor took 10%, and this proposal would add back half of that, the 5%.
The agency provided a 10%,
Right.
and the governor took half of it.
Yeah. The agency provided the 10%, and the governor took half of that. And that is $37 million, 37 and some change. 37,400,000. Amy's the only one that had this, but this is just the 5% that we've been asked. Amy, it looks like she may have another copy. So we're discussing, we just started discussing, adding back 5% of the governor's. So I would be curious, I want to hear what the committee says, but I would be curious if the House, did they make a position on higher ed today? No?
No.
They just had other questions?
Presentations from the president.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm just going to make that as a motion, and I'd be happy to hear other comments.
Shirley, I thought the amount was around 25 or 26 million, so are we talking the same thing?
Take the mic, because the people out there can't hear you. Sorry.
The information we presented to Senator McGinn was the reduced resource package, which was the reduction that the universities have been talking about. I'm not sure where the 25 million comes from.
That's the number that I was told was either 25 or 26 million to restore.
There was a restored gear fund of 26.3 million.
Oh, okay.
The governor already put that in. That was put into the budget, not taken out for 22. What the governor took out of the budget was the reduced resources, about 5.5% of the 10% that the agencies provided.
That's a different number than I was told, so I don't know. I see Regents is here. Mr. Flanders, would you mind answering a question if you can, and maybe you don't have the information, but in the cuts that was done last year, and I know we had some cuts and then money was used from the gears or different COVID relief funds. And at the end of the day, to make the universities whole, I was told it was around 25 or 26 million dollars. Are we looking at the same things, or are we looking at something different?
So I believe it's 37.4 million.
That's what she just said, 37, but I'd never heard that number.
So there's a lot of numbers flying around. The initial cut in last year's budget was and it was swapped with federal dollars, which I would tell you that it's, when you swap federal dollars for more flexible state dollars, it's not an even swap, but that was the 26 point and change dollar amount. That was, the governor essentially restored that, if you will, with the federal dollars for this year. We then submitted budgets. We were asked to do a 10% resource reduction package. So those budgets came in, and the governor retained a 5.5% cut to the agency and the university's budgets. That dollar amount is 37.4 million. That would be an ongoing reduction. So we submitted budgets that were 10%. They added back, I think it's 4.5%, but that still means a cut of 5.5%, which is 37.4 million.
Okay, so then there was the 10 million that the governor put in her budget, the 10.3 or 10.4. Was that partial replacement of this? I mean,
separate. So the governor then put in 10.29 million, I believe 294 million, into our budget for board priorities. The board has said we are going to dedicate that to the deferred maintenance issue that we have.
so I wonder if the number I received then was the 37.4 minus the 10.2 that was restored or used for whatever, which would be 27.2 left, and that's where the 27 come from. So I think it's the difference in what wasn't put back in there then. Okay. Senator McGinn.
Mr. Chairman, since we are just talking about the reduced resource, I want to remind everybody last summer, the federal government, when the governor cut the higher ed, the federal government supplanted it, so it was a wash. This is just the reduced resource package. Since you were saying you thought that number was around 27 million, and I'm trying to get a calculation here, Okay. I would like to change my proposal, and I would like to move that to restore 3% of the cut back to higher ed and not 5%. And that gets it back to the number that you were thinking.
Okay. We have a second? Second by Senator Kirshen. Discussion on the 3%. So the 3% would be what amount, or is that around 25?
25 million.
25, okay. Any other questions on that, or are we good with the 25?
And we can review it again at omnibus.
Reviewed it
We don't
almost.
know what the House is.
Right, and plus, maybe we can use some relief money for this.
We're going to know a whole lot more then.
Right, okay. Senator Hawk.
No, thank you. If that's the best we can do right now and it keeps our negotiating position, I certainly think that's the right thing to do. I personally would like to have seen the whole thing restored, but I understand that we, as a group, I'm as a group, a very small one-person group, willing to do that at a higher number, and I think that might give us a good position, but I certainly also support the 25 million. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Did anyone else have anything additional that I missed? Senator Kirshen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have an amendment, I guess, or a recommendation that we continue the support of the Kansas Geological Survey Earthquake Monitoring Program, which ends this year and starts new in '22. It's been at $100,000 for a 2-year program, and starting in '22. And review that at omnibus to see if we have funding for that.
We have a motion second by Senator Clays, and we'll look at this at omnibus and also see if maybe there's some relief money that can be directed that way.
You're not on the advisory board, are you?
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had talked to Senator Kirshen about one of the amendments he had earlier in terms of the engineers at KDHE. If we might want a little broader language going into potentially conference committee. And I don't know that we absolutely need to change what we did, but I just wanted to make sure we gave the agency some flexibility. I know that some of the constituent groups wanted to make sure we had adequate engineers. The agency was willing to certainly have their budget cut, but wanted to have some flexibility to keep all of their programs going. So I throw that out, and I don't think, Senator Kirshen, I don't want to speak for you, is at a point where you want to change that language now, but I don't think you're totally opposed to making sure that we keep as much flexibility to keep all of the programs going. So I throw that out. Senator Kirshen, I don't know, do you see a win-win way to look at that issue?
Senator Kirshen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we're willing to look at any proposal the KDH&E has. This was a pinpoint. They were going to make cuts, and they were picking who was going to be done with it, the engineers, and we wanted engineers that are permitting to stay and not an inspection, if there was a choice, a preference there. So I think, and a lot of it will revolve around the Clean Air Act, how much money they're going to request for compensation for that. We'll enter in that too, so.
Thank you, Senator Kirshen. And Mr. Chairman, I'm just saying for us to kind of keep that on our radar so we have at least some flexibility if we need it there.
I'm sure Senator Hawk will keep it on our radar.
You can count on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Kirshen.
Okay, is there any other amendments? Seeing none, Senator Clays.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to recommend Senate Bill 267 as a substitute bill, that all adopted committee amendments be included in the substitute bill, that staff be authorized to make any technical amendments, and that substitute for Senate Bill 267 be passed.
We have a motion. We have a second by Senator McGinn, and we'll have a roll call vote.
Plays. Erickson. Fag. Hawk. Kirshen. McGinn. Swellentrop. And Billinger.
Well, with that, our work is completed. Thank everyone for your help and appreciate all the work. No meeting tomorrow.